Well, hello. I hope you're having a good evening. I wanted to make a little video and just share with you something that I recently came across I thought might be interesting. Um, Normally, I would do videos like this with the Leaving the Message podcast, and I'm sure I will here in the future. But this is something I thought was noteworthy enough that I should share it with our audience here as well because it has a particular something that hits close to home. I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about a man named Hobart Freeman. And before I do, let me first remind you, if you're a new listener here, who I am. My name is Charles Paisley. I'm formerly the associate pastor of Faith Assembly Church of Jeffersonville, Indiana, which was the second oldest message church in the world. The Message was a global doomsday cult, which still exists today, that was launched by William Branham in the 1950s. Faith Assembly of Jeffersonville was the second message church ever to be planted. I'm formerly the associate pastor of that church. It was established in 1955, originally in New Albany, moved to Clarksville, moved a couple times to Clarksville, and after 2 points in Clarksville, I believe it landed in its present spot, which is on the western edge of Jeffersonville, Indiana, just off US 31. Now, I want to talk to you about a man named Hobart Freeman. Hobart Freeman is a man, I'll just put up a few pictures here of him. That way you can kind of get an idea of who he is. Hobart Freeman was a preacher who actually was right in this area. He was the pastor of a church in Sellersburg, Indiana, which is about 3 miles up US 31 from the present location of Faith Assembly Church. He was the pastor of that church in I believe the 1950s. He was there for a number of years at the same time, that Faith Assembly was in existence in its early days. Through later years, he moved to northern Indiana, near Warsaw, Indiana, and in that area, and he started a church that was also called Faith Assembly Church, the same name as our church. I believe his church was opened in 1972, I believe. And as that happened, the years went on. Hobart Freeman got in all kinds of trouble. His church was in the news because of the teachings and practices of his church. Over time, the exact number is very hard to be precise and to know exactly, but somewhere, I think, with the things I've looked at, somewhere between 180 and 225 people in his church were killed. They were killed primarily through their healing beliefs. He convinced people to abandon medical care, to not go to the doctor, to not take medicine, and through his beliefs of that, somewhere between 180 to 225 people in his church were killed and died needless deaths. A number of the people involved in it ended up going to jail for a variety of reasons. Hobart Freeman himself ended up arrested. He ended up actually convicted and held responsible for many of the things. And during those years, it really all came to light, and the prison terms and all the jail stuff, that all started in the 1980s. Faith Assembly was big international news, certainly big national news here in the United States through those years, as they killed perhaps 225 of their own people. And Hobart Freeman eventually ended up indicted, and he died, very right in that same time frame, and passed away. Now, very horrific things that happened, and if you don't know about that, that's all true. It can all be documented through the news how the Faith Assembly of Warsaw, Indiana, killed hundreds of its members, and the ringleaders were prosecuted, and some people even went to jail over it. All very sad, all very unfortunate. After Hobart Freeman died, one minister who was at one point in fellowship with Faith Assembly of Warsaw, his name was Chino Ross. He has a great podcast channel on YouTube if you want to look him up. He does some great Bible teaching. Chino Ross, he came into possession of all of Hobart Freeman's personal papers. And through that, we have access to different things that were in Hobart Freeman's own personal possession. Now, I and a number of others have long suspected that Hobart Freeman's Faith Assembly in Warsaw, Indiana, was related and in some degree in fellowship with the Faith Assembly Fellowship, which I come from. There are Faith Assembly churches of my sect of the message all around the world. Faith Assembly is a very common name. It's very unusual that he was pastoring a church about 3 miles away from Faith Assembly of Jeffersonville. At one point, that he chose to name his own church Faith Assembly. And if you look through his teachings and sermon titles and tracts, he was preaching the same titles, the same subjects, following the same manners, using a lot of the same phraseology, right in the same years. He talked about his teachings, he called them the message of the hour. He talked about William Branham. He talked about many subjects that you and I would be very familiar with in his sermons. Many of his doctrines and teachings are things that we absolutely taught and believed in the churches that we came from. Now, in the 1980s, after he went to prison and all of the bad news happened, our leaders at Faith Assembly in Jeffersonville went to great lengths to distance themselves from him, to say they had no relationship with him, no connection to him. And now I was a fairly young person, back in those days, and I don't have any awareness of the years in which Hobart Freeman could have been potentially visiting our churches, because by the time he died and went to jail, like I said, I was still just a child, without a real strong awareness of what was going on, and naturally I believed everything our leaders told us, that we had nothing to do with him. But, what I want to share with you now is this very last picture. And this picture was recently given to me via John Collins, and it comes directly from Chino Ross. And what we have here is a picture of the Contender magazine that was in the personal papers of Chino Ross, or rather Dr. Hobart Freeman, and Chino Ross had gained possession of them. You'll notice there, Faith Assembly Church, Route 3, Jeffersonville, Indiana. That is an edition of the Contender, and I can tell just by looking at that picture that is one of our Contenders on the Church Ages that came out in 1977. I can identify one of these from just a little scrap of the text on it. So this is the Contender on the Church Ages from 1977. And as you can see there very clearly, this was addressed and mailed to Hobart Freeman, Dr. Hobart Freeman, the pastor of Faith Assembly Church in Warsaw, Indiana, the church that was at that time in the process of killing hundreds of its members. Now, the reason I show this to you is because it is impossible that the leaders and the people at Faith Assembly Church in leadership position could have been unaware that we were mailing the Contender to Dr. Hobart Freeman. For clarity's sake, in years after this, I actually became the editor of the Contender magazine. And I know that it is impossible that they did not know that he was on the mailing list. And in fact, the only way you could have got on this mailing list was somehow he was coming and visiting and attending our Faith Assembly churches somehow. That's the only way he could have even got on this mailing list to get this. And it also, I think, explains why our leaders went to such great lengths after he went to prison and all the people died to distance themselves from him. The main reason I want to bring this to your attention is because I just want to point out to you that every time the people and leaders at Faith Assembly said that there was no connection to Hobart Freeman, that they were lying to us. They were lying to us. Hobart Freeman was in fellowship at one point with Faith Assembly Church of Jeffersonville. He was on the mailing list of the Contender. The teachings of our church absolutely played some role in influencing his beliefs. And I'll go this far as to say Faith Assembly of Jeffersonville had some responsibility to tell the truth, if nothing else, about what was going on at Faith Assembly of Warsaw. And they certainly are guilty of lying to us and covering up the connections of senior leadership to the deaths of hundreds of people. Now, I think it's important for us to see this, to know this. There you have it, with your own eyes. Hobart Freeman's address on a 1977 edition of the Contender. And my understanding is there are more than these. Now, brothers and sisters, I brought that to your attention just because I thought it's something important for you to see. Now, I hope you're all doing well. I'm praying for you all. God bless you all.